It's funny, isn't it? Sitting here, you know you've gone live because the clock started, and it's that moment where you're awkward. Hey, how you going, Scott? Hello, Susan. You had no bell. Oh dear, oh dear. I wonder why that happens. No bell again. I heard someone the other day, one of the other readers. Hello, Lauren. One of the other readers on here was saying that people weren't getting the bells all the time. But to be honest with you, YouTube has, hey, how you going, Sue? No, I know no bell. Hey, Jules, how you going? One of the other readers was saying that bells weren't going off, but this week has been really difficult on YouTube. There's been some really strange things happening. I had, first of all, I had some people's personal um, some people's personal readings went straight to public. So I had to, oh, you got a notification. Good. So I had to be really, really cautious when I was uploading. Hey, Joanne, how you going? Hi, Sue B. We're going to have to be fun today. We've got 3 Sues on here today. Hey, Vane, how you going? And they were saying that, yeah, so I had so much trouble. I couldn't get good, Diane. Thank you for letting me know. I had trouble posting videos. I had trouble keeping getting it to keep things on the system. It kept dropping off all the time, and it was just really difficult last week. So whatever they're doing, oh, way we're to the pool. Good for you. How cool is that? I'm coming over your place over the summer. Hello, Jane. How are you going? Yeah, so it's been, hey, Lisa, how are you? It's been, yeah, a little bit difficult, but YouTube, every now and again, they'll try something new and they'll change something and it throws everything else off, and then they go back. So you know that they've thrown everything else out. Oh, good, Erin. How are you? It's lovely to see you on here. Social life in Australia, you know, we're doing a lot better at the moment. Victoria's now under 100 people a day with COVID. New South Wales is still hovering around about 20 people a day, but hopefully we've got the bulk of it done. So it'll be really interesting. I love these earrings too, Jane. They're one of my favorites. I've had them a very long time and I love them. Yeah, so whenever YouTube changes something, how are you, Tammy? Guys, lovely to see everybody here today. Facebook's the same. So Facebook this week changed their, I don't know if everybody noticed it. How are you, Gillian? Good to see you. Hey, Sarah. Facebook changed as well. I got on there and I was like, this doesn't look right to me. And I was so confused by it. I'm okay now. I'm starting to get a little bit used to it. I'm not sure that I think that the changes are great. But then last time when they changed Facebook, I hated it and I actually got used to it anyway. So I don't like not being able to find things. I think it would be really nice. It's like working for the government. It'd be really nice if they came on before and said, this is what it's going to look like, and give you some places where things are going to be. So you don't have to look for them anymore. But I think in the long run, it probably is going to be better. Yeah, we've had, Erin, we've had a lot of demand for, there's definitely no problem with unemployment per se here. So employment is there. There's a lot of places asking for people, but it's like some areas are experiencing really high growth and other areas not so much. So, for example, a friend of mine works for a retail chain that has about 12 stores under the retail name. Hey, Caitlin, how you going? And she said that they're closing down some 500 of their stores this year because they're just not doing well. So retail trade, women working, part-time jobs, they are going to really be hit hard. So retail's sort of feeling it a little bit, but there are some places that people say to me they can't get things. So Woolworths and Coles are having trouble getting people to do the shopping now because everybody's ordering online. And I think that's going to be the way of the future. So there's sort of things like that happening. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But yeah, lots of changes, Erin. And I feel that the 50 age group in Australia, we're a little bit what I see as a little bit ageist. Oh, funny, Sarah. We are a bit ageist here, and people do find it difficult to get jobs over the age of 50. And I know traveling overseas, that was a real enlightenment for me because most countries really sort of revere and appreciate the older generation for their experience. I feel that's going to change here as well. Oh, Armidale's closing Big W. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's really interesting. The whole world's changing, Erin. I see it. I see it as we're going. It's like things that were one way don't seem to be that way anymore, and things that were the other way are changing. So it's almost like it's morphing like a water balloon. It'll be really interesting. In Ottawa. Yeah, and a lot of the clothing stores are gonna be the ones that are hit more than anything. The problem is with clothing stores, I've bought stuff online before and I've gone through their sizing and thought, "Oh, well, that will fit," and it's come and it's been like this big, so there's no way in the world it will fit me. And when you go to send it back, they want to charge you for sending it back. I'm like, "How dare you wanna charge me when your sizing on your site is wrong?" So then I give them a review. Um Women and part-time workers taken the biggest hit, which is really sad, isn't it? So especially in retail, because it's majority women, and the majority of women in retail only work the short hours because of their children, and they're the ones that are going to be hit really hard this year. That's too funny. 112 cases of COVID in the whole of Ontario. That's pretty good, Susan. So they're getting them down over there too. We've gone on a bit of a journey because we were almost COVID free, and then Victoria had a big outbreak and started it all off again. They were at 800 a day for a few days, but they've lost 500 people there in the last 5 or 6 weeks. So it's been pretty horrendous. And then New South Wales started getting a few again, as did other states, because the people in Victoria wouldn't stay put. So that was a bit of a problem. Hello, gorgeous. How you going, Lioness? So yeah, so it's been quite interesting, but most of Australia is pretty good now. So hopefully we can get on top of it this time. But you see, New Zealand didn't have any. They were COVID free for several weeks. And then they had 4 or 5 COVID cases. I think they've got 8 now, and they don't even know where it came from. It's quite bizarre. So they were still investigating where did it actually come from. So it's really, there's been some really strange ones actually with the COVID. But anyway, I was going to talk about, a lot of people had asked me about the twin flame journey and understanding the difference between like narcissistic relationships with codependent people, and how to know the difference with the twin flame relationship. And I thought that's a really good question, because a lot of narcissistic relationships are quite damaging for people. But then if you're in a narcissistic relationship too, that sort of means that as the person working with a narcissist, you've probably got some traits that you're going to be woken up to as well. 3.5 months with no cases, and now you've got them. Hey, honey, how you going? Yeah, so people sort of say, how does that happen? Oh my goodness, 7,600 cases. Mind you, you said 13,000 or something one day last week. So that's come down half. 7,500. It's ridiculous. Yeah, so I thought let's talk about narcissism and empaths. Now, empaths can be what we class people pleasers, and they can be codependent. So they're all, thank you, they're Lioness. I bet your partner named you that, didn't he? um, and a lot of people don't realize that. So the codependent word came from actually people who had addictions, because the people that ended up with people with addictions were very often enablers. So a codependent was a person who enabled an addict to be an addict by trying somehow to rescue them, but actually buying into their addiction. So, codependency, there's a really good book by Melanie Beattie, which I think a lot of people should read, because even if they don't have an addict for a partner, there's lots of help in there for people to understand how we feed and how we actually enable a narcissist or enable a more abusive person to either fall in love with us or want to be with us. So, and the people pleasing is part of that codependency. But in the spiritual world, we always call it empath, but they all mean the same thing. They all mean exactly the same thing. And all of that has come from the childhood stuff. Kissy Fox, it's cute, isn't it? How are you, Gigi? So what happens in, and I've talked to lots of people about this over, a very long time. When you meet someone who's more likely to have what we see as, or is a narcissist, or is more likely to have narcissistic tendencies or narcissistic attributes, the things that make a narcissist are the very same things an empath experiences. And this is the whole nature nurture argument. Is in a family can have abusive parents or narcissistic parents or parents with mental health disorders, and they can raise their children, and some of the children will become narcissistic and some of the children will become empathic. So what happens a lot of the time is we don't, as empaths, really recognize the narcissist probably growing up, because we're used to people being around us like that and we're adapting to their environment. And if you're being sort of abused or oppressed from a very young person, it might be very difficult for you to understand. How are you, Jackie? Oh, that's all right, my darling. It was lovely for you to pop in. Thank you. We grow up adapting to our environment, as does the narcissistic personality or the person who's more likely to be an abuser. Now, there really is no way to understand why it is that some children become more abused and some children become more abusive, or people grow up that way. There's no valid studies to show why it changes, and we argue the nurture nature till the cows come home, and nobody understands why that happens. But some people are more, I feel, more sensitive than other children. So a sensitive person in a family where there's very dominant children might be more likely to become empathic or the people pleaser. And why is that? Well, if you're living in a house where you have very abusive or aggressive family members, parents and siblings, the chances are pretty good you learn to work with that. So you adapt your behavior to what's going on around. So how do you adapt your behavior? Well, first off, you avoid conflict. And you try to always fix things, because it seems much easier to try and fix other people so that you don't get into trouble. So we actually grow up as the codependent, as the empath, as the people pleaser, somewhat manipulative ourselves, because we're learning how to placate people or placate people, or whatever you'd like to say. We learn to work with other people to keep the conflict down. We don't like conflict. It happened a lot at home when we were children. So we want to avoid anybody getting angry or upset with us. So we give in all the time. We keep feeding that energy. So the more aggressive and the more angry someone is, the more we feed that energy, because we do not want anybody to be angry or upset with us. We fear all of the things we feared as a child. So when we get into relationships as adults, if we meet someone who is more aggressive or abusive, we avoid the conflict. So we keep giving in to them all the time. And of course, that makes the relationship toxic because we are not thinking of ourselves in the relationship. We're putting the other person ahead of ourselves and we keep feeding their energies. And what happens is that person becomes more and more toxic. They're liking things their way. They can become more aggressive, sometimes maybe violent if they don't get their own way. But we've been responsible to some degree because we haven't stopped them right from the beginning by having good, healthy boundaries around ourselves, because we never learned to develop healthy boundaries when we were children. So we allowed people to do that to us as children, and then we go out into the world and we find partners who do the same thing. Why do we do that? Well, perhaps our parents were, supposed to love us. And sometimes I have to say to people, not all parents love their children. I don't know why we have that misconception. But what happens is a parent displays a certain behavior to their children, and they work with their children in a certain way. And that child grows up thinking that's what love looks like. So when they go out to have their own relationships, they're looking for the same attributes in a partner. And very often, if that parent has been abusive or aggressive, we often recognize that and think, well, that's what our parent, subconsciously, that's what our parent did. So therefore, that person must love us. So if our parents did things a certain way, we translate that into love. So very often when we've had abusive relationships, it's because we've deliberately pulled someone into our lives that's replicated one of our parents. So it's really, yeah, and honey, this is the one thing I learned on this journey, is that even though you marry someone who has very narcissistic tendencies, or, maybe slightly psychopathic or sociopathic, borderline personality disorder, if you meet someone like that, the moment that person shows you any sort of form of aggression or not agreeing with you or frightens you in any way, or you've fallen madly in love with them, especially with a narcissist, because they love bombing you. So they'll have you falling in love with them and married them within 3 months of meeting them. What happens is you tend to avoid the conflict, either because you don't want the repercussions or because you don't want to lose them. So in the beginning, when there's lots of love and it's all furry and kind and nice, you just keep giving into it. So what happens is, by the time you realize that that person is probably not the best person to be with, you're probably already knee deep into the relationship. It's a very complex thing, but yeah, see, there you go. There's a good example, Susan. Thank you. A lot of us spend a lot of years not really understanding why that's happening, and perhaps thinking that we're responsible, but then not really doing the healing we need to do, or understanding the journey properly so we can heal ourselves and understand that we've probably picked up some of those manipulative tendencies during that time. So you end up with someone who's really bent out of shape in the relationship, someone who's extremely toxic, and then the two of them can't separate because of their own abandon and attachment issues from childhood. So it's a very toxic relationship. So very different. Okay, so then people want to know, why is the twin flame and the energy of a twin flame relationship, which is very, very different. So it's possible that the other person could have narcissistic tendencies, but there is no abuse or nasty stuff. Very often with twin flames, they're brought together very, very quickly. The level of love and desire they have for each other is very, very high. The relationship sort of explodes in a way that is unexplainable. Emotions get really ridiculously high, and then one person can't manage, handle, or learn to work with the emotions because of their own childhood trauma. So they tend to run from the relationship because it's scary for them. They don't understand. And then the other person's wondering what they did wrong, or wondering why it didn't work, or trying to understand that. but it raises, even for the person that's not running after someone, that raises a lot of emotional issues for them, because you've been abandoned or rejected, or what you perceive as rejected by someone. So that starts to raise all the stuff from your childhood again. So the only thing they both have in common in terms of relationships, the narcissist and the empath, or codependent or people pleaser relationship, generally keeps going. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. And it keeps going until the relationship becomes really vile, really toxic, and then the two people pull apart for whatever reason. Generally, because not the narcissistic person, the other person is usually starts to become resentful and angry because they put so much time and energy into this person, and they've worshipped them and given them everything that they thought was the right thing to do. And they wake up one day and go, hang on a moment, I'm really unhappy in this relationship, but this person's usually very happy. They're usually really happy. So it's the other person that usually leaves, generally. With the twin flame relationship, because it's so different, it generally does not last very long. It's usually quite a brief thing. It might only last a little while. It's very intense for the time it does last, but generally, because of all the same childhood wounds that we see in most children at some stage or another, whether that has been from one parent, both parents, or upbringing, or beliefs about upbringing, or even the abuses that are out there, what happens is in all children that has some impact. So generally with the twin flames, you find that they too have had pretty distressing childhoods. But I think that it's possible that both of them could be empathic, or both of them could be empaths. It just works a slightly different way. But empaths, like everybody else, codependents, people pleasers, we all have issues that need to be healed. So the worst thing you can do after a twin flame relationship or a narcissistic relationship is go banging into a new relationship without doing any healing, because the chances are pretty good you're going to be vibrating at the level to bring in another person exactly the same. And that's not true, Scott. Empaths are not perfect. They are actually quite manipulative people as well. But their manipulation is just done in a very different way. We want to save people. We want to look good because we're out there helping people in the community. If you're completely altruistic and saying you're doing it because you love doing it and it's something you want to do, then stop for a moment and think, is that what you're really believing? Or do you do it because, it's the right thing to do because it's a job and you get paid? But we're not perfect. Absolutely not. Because even when you're dealing with a narcissistic relationship, you pick up narcissistic fleas. And I did see somebody talking about that later. We're putting ourselves last. That's not perfect. Perfect is making sure that you're putting yourself with the other person, not underneath them. You can't put other people on a pedestal and think they're wonderful and worship them if they are not coming back and worshipping you back. Amber, I think that's a really good question. Do we think we project others' energy onto new people we meet? Yes, very much so. We often see in another person what we are in fact ourselves. So there's a lot of mirroring, especially in the twin flame relationship, and that's what creates the healing. That's why it's such a special relationship, because it's there to show you what your, I don't want to call them defects because you've only learned them from role modeling from parents. I feel that you definitely project onto other people. And you respond the same way. So if somebody responds to you like you would respond, then you're going to get agitated because you see that in the other person. But very often it's the very thing in yourself that you don't like or you don't feel comfortable with. Hey, Hayley, how you going? And Lioness is back. Absolutely, Gigi. Good question. I love this one. Not all narcissists have had what they see as an abusive or poor upbringing. Some narcissists have been raised in houses where parents have allowed them to get away with everything and not to be punished or given boundaries. So I've met people who've come from really difficult relationships with partners, romantic partners, and the other person, the narcissistic person, has had a really beautiful upbringing, or it seems that way. But actually, there were no boundaries in the house, and the child was overappreciated or over worshipped and not really given good, healthy boundaries. So, in a narcissistic family, if you've got one narcissist parent or both narcissistic parents, and they are raising children, very often in the house, there's one child which they call the golden child. So, these are, when you look at these issues around particular family units, some of these things are exactly the same no matter where you go in any culture, anywhere where people are rich, poor, it doesn't matter, well educated or not, it doesn't matter. The same sort of dynamic seems to occur where in the family there's one child that is seen as a golden child and one child that's seen as a scapegoat. And the scapegoated child is generally the one that's treated very, very differently to the other children, and very often ends up more empathic because they're trying to avoid the conflict because they get targeted a lot more. The golden child is the child that can do no wrong. The really sad part is the golden child and the empath child do not understand the relationship between each other. So very often there's jealousy between the children because one or the other is seen to be getting all the love and attention and the other one's not getting any. So there's sort of this dynamic or archetype that seems to happen in all the families, regardless of how many is in the family, regardless of the children, the gender, it seems to happen the same way. Let me just have a look at some of the questions. Yes, and you can recognize that, Gigi, because you are more empathic. So somehow or another, you have molded yourself as a child, probably because you were more sensitive, into being more of the empath as a child. Yeah, parents who've done everything for them. Linus has just come up with that. That can create a narcissist too. The best show to see all this, if you want to see a really good show which shows all of this in action, is Raymond. In Raymond, of course, the mother is extremely narcissistic. Raymond is her golden child. Robert is the scapegoated child. It's always Robert's fault. Nobody is good enough for Raymond. So his wife, Deborah, I think, the mother is always putting her down because in her eyes, her golden child should love her the most. If you ever want to look at something, there's lots of things out there, but if you ever want to look at something that's been written, especially for this reason, it's always the thing that I say to people to watch. You will understand. I used to tell my children, all of them, you're my favorite. You're my favorite. If it's an only child, Hayley, very often they become the golden child. So the parents, because there's only one child, the parents invest everything in that child. So very often they can become either the golden child or the scapegoated child. So it's sort of like it depends on what the parents are projecting onto the child. You know, if you've got a parent who wants the child to be everything they couldn't be in their life, say if they wanted to be a ballerina, and they inject everything in the child to be a ballerina, they want that child to be perfect. So you often find those children are really abused because they never get to do what they want to do. They're completely manipulated. So I'll talk about the narcissist a bit further, I think, so you can understand. Yes, I agree, Sarah. That's exactly where it comes from. I'll get to that, Scott. I think there's only one twin flame for you, Jules. I think you only have one twin flame and you go through different lifetimes with that one person, but you could be different. You could be father and daughter in one life. You could be romantic. And I think sometimes your twin flame doesn't make the whole life with you. Absolutely, Gillian. We all manipulate. It's the way we do things. We manipulate our own children, but there is sort of a level of manipulation that probably is healthily acceptable. Like, you know, if you go and clean your bedroom, I'll give you a bowl of ice cream. That's manipulation. I like to think of it as negotiation, but it's manipulation no matter which way you look at it. Oh, there you go. See, Marie, yes, that's right. It's a very narcissistic relationship, that one. Um, Everyone loves Raymond. Yeah, exactly. I used to feel so sorry for Robert because I got Robert. Um, yes, you can get two narcissists in a relationship. Generally, one narcissist will be very accommodating, very what we call covert, and extremely manipulative. And the other one is generally more aggressive, more overt, but you can get two, yes. Learned emotional behavior, absolutely. Twin flame, but you can have lots of soulmates. That's correct. Absolutely. The addiction, is it you're talking, Chaz, about an addiction to people? Because it takes a lot of work to start recognizing that. I'd go and have a look at the Spartan coach, Richard Grannon. He talks about that a lot. But it's a lot of work to get yourself out of the energy so you don't do it anymore. I like negotiation better too. Bribery, perfect. Still manipulation. But it's sort of oh, there you go. So, yeah, it's a beautiful book, isn't it, Sarah? So when you okay, let's just have a look at narcissists. Let's dig a little bit deeper with narcissism. Okay, so a narcissist, if a person is a true narcissist, they meet, I think, 8 or 10 criteria in the book, the DSV, whatever it is, DSV, DSM, whatever it is, anyway, wherever they're up to. So it's a book that says this is what a psychopath looks like, or someone with borderline personality disorder, and they have to meet a certain criteria. Some people don't have all the criteria of being a narcissist, but they may have some narcissistic tendencies. The same as an empath or a person who's codependent might have what we call fleas, which means we have some of those tendencies ourselves. The only difference between a narcissist and an empath or codependent or people pleaser is if you say anything to a narcissist, they will not think there's anything wrong with them. They think they are perfect. No matter which way you look at it, they're perfect. They're better than you. They are living completely in an ego, and they do not know how to heal. They can't heal for some reason. No, that's much more complex than I could explain. An empath or a codependent or somebody on the other end of the journey, they will understand at some point in their life that things are not right. They may be attracting narcissists all the time. Their relationships may always go quite toxic. They may not be able to love someone because they can't understand the giving back from the other person. So that's something you've got to learn, is that you can take back. You've got to learn to let someone love you. So there's the first thing that we're not very good at. So it's obviously still back to the narcissism. It's part of the narcissistic stuff that we are finding it really difficult to allow someone to love us back. So many of us may not have experienced love at a romantic level because we don't know how to take, we only know how to give, which is very unhealthy and just the recipe for a toxic relationship. So what happens is a narcissist who is believing that they are above everyone else. That's that they don't know they're a narcissist. Same as a psychopath doesn't know that it's a psychopath, or a sociopath doesn't know they're a sociopath. They do not understand. Probably get very angry if you call them a narcissist because they do not believe there's anything wrong with them. Whereas an empath or a codependent, if you call them a narcissist, they'd probably be booking themselves into the nearest clinic to see what's wrong with themselves, because immediately we know there's something wrong. If somebody says something to us, they could call someone a purple people eater, and we'd be like, really, am I a purple people eater? I need to go and check and make sure there's nothing wrong with me. So we're completely the opposite. But the narcissist doesn't see other people. They're very cold. They don't have real emotions. It's very difficult to form a connection with them. They can feign or fake being in love with you for the first couple of months. I think mostly within the first 6 months, you'll know that they are cold, unfeeling. They don't know how to experience emotion. Everything about what they do with people is manipulation. So what they see you as is like an extension of them. So when they first find you, they put you on a pedestal because they go, this person's going to save me. They're incredibly wonderful. So they plonk you on a pedestal and do everything to make you feel happy. They'll gift you, they'll throw love bombs at you, they'll do everything. And they actually manipulate you to a point where they know what sort of person you want them to be, and they change. They're like chameleons. So they adapt to the environment. So in you come with this romantic view of someone and think, I want someone who looks like Prince Charming on a white horse. And the narcissist will listen to everything you say. They'll listen to everything, and they start to manipulate their personality to get you to fall in love with them. So they're the person who comes out after 2 weeks and goes, I'm in love with you. Like, how can you be in love with me? You don't even know me. Oh, yes, I do. I think you're wonderful. I this and that and the other. And before you know it, you're all sucked into it. That's the love bomb stage. So what happens after the love bombing stage is they start to see you as faulty, that you're not as perfect as when they first met you. So they start to pick at you. They start to pick holes in you. They start to find fault with you. So it may be some of the things that I talked about before on here. So they find faults and they start picking at the faults. And what happens is you start to become defensive because of your mechanisms, and you're easily hurt and very sensitive. You start to become reactive. You start to become emotional. Oh, the narcissist loves that. Trigger, 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 trigger. Emotion, 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 emotion. Manipulation, manipulation. Because once you become emotional and you get sad and your self-esteem starts to wear down and your confidence starts to go, that narcissistic personality will just keep digging away at you. So you keep giving, you keep going, well, I'm not good enough. I'm going to lose this person that I love so much, and I'm going to, what am I going to do if they go? So you keep giving to the relationship, giving, 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 giving. And what happens is it just starts to become toxic because you're not getting anything back. So you can do that for a certain amount of time, but one day you wake up and you say, hang on a moment, I'm really not happy in this relationship. I keep putting so much into it. All the love I have, I've been putting in. But you've actually manipulated that person to keep loving you. So there's a whole toxic energy going on then. But if you say you're leaving, the narcissist is going to get very, very angry because they've got you where they need you now. They've probably cut you off from your family and friends. They've probably got you in a position where your self-esteem and your confidence is rock bottom, which means that you're very, very easily manipulated. And all you keep doing is putting into the relationship, thinking you're going to save it. And that can go on for years like that. So when you finally realize and become resentful and angry that you've put so much time and energy into that person and they're not giving you anything back, then you'll want to go. And that person will get very angry because you're exactly where they need you to be then. So that becomes a real problem then, trying to get away from that energy. And some narcissists, if they can start to feel you pull away, or they think you're going to see who they really are, because they've obviously been pretending, they'll go out and find what they call narcissistic supply. So chances are pretty good they'll be in another relationship very quickly, but they will never let you go. They probably keep coming round. You probably still keep hearing from them, but that's what they will do. Hey, Jolene, how are you going? Okay, just hang on a second. I just want to go back and read. So Jules, yeah, well, I think most of us psychics have been through the energy and ended up quite psychic because of the journey. But if you put the work in, I think, yes, people can become more narcissistic. I think they still have the tendencies from very young, but they don't. You've got to be a better man, Scott. If you want a better woman, you've got to be a better man. So being a better man means not believing that you're perfect and thinking that doing everything for someone is a good thing to do. Because being a better man is understanding that someone needs to love you back. If you're putting into a relationship and you're not getting love back, then it's not a good relationship. Purple people eater. Well, know what I mean? Come on, Jess. If someone says to you, you've got one leg shorter than the other, if you're empathic, the first thing you do is, oh, I better go make a doctor's appointment and just check that out. You never call someone a narcissist. Don't do it. It's asking for a death sentence. Super charming. Super charming. I could give you some really good examples for you to sort of work that out for yourself. Yeah, I think that if you're an empath, you will ask yourself at some stage or another in the journey, am I a narcissist or not? If you're asking if you're a narcissist, chances are pretty good you're not. But I would still have a look at your behaviors in regards to what sort of energy you're carrying around that may come across that way. But narcissists never get to know you. They will never know. They don't know how to buy gifts for you because they never know who you are. So they'll buy gifts that are really strange, really odd. I think I talked about the narcissist that I was with, and I said I wanted to leave because I felt that I needed to work on myself more, that I had a lot of issues, blah, blah, blah. My counselor, I went to see a counselor, and he said to me, bring your partner along and we can, have a look at, see how we go with the relationship and whether he wants to work on it. And when I went and said to him, would you like to work on this relationship? Come to the counseling with me. He said, there's nothing wrong with me. Why would I go to counseling? Okay, interesting. Yeah, we have fleas for sure. Yeah, that's gaslighting. That's gaslighting, Lioness. So what they try to do is they try to make it look like your fault all the time. They would never apologize, but they will always blame you for everything and never take responsibility. And that is gaslighting. So if you want to look up gaslighting, love bombing, traits of a narcissist, if you think you're with a narcissist, go and look up on that. Watch Richard Grannon, the Spartan coach. Brilliant. He helped me through a lot of stuff. Tonya Evans, Australian woman, she's really good too. Yes, Freud was right. You see, you marry your parents. Everybody laughed at him when he said that, but it's actually very true, because if your parents have shown you love that way, you think that you're loved. Gaslighting, that's it. Two empaths able to have a great relationship. Absolutely. Absolutely. But both of them have got to have done the healing, because you can't have two empaths together if neither one has good and healthy boundaries. So being part of the journey for us is about us understanding that we need to have healthy boundaries. We need to know how to be loved back. We need to work on our own emotional stuff, be the observer in our own life, and really understand what we've carried forward with us that we need to work on. Yeah, I know. Sometimes you can call them though, and they don't listen, Jeanette. They don't really get it. They don't get it all. Yeah. Yeah. And if you have narcissists in your home, if your family, if you've recognized that you have narcissistic family members, then you really need to take a good look at yourself, give yourself a good shakedown. Me too, Jules, 3 of them, but there's been a few in between as well. So, oh, Jess, you're too cute. Julie, where did you come from? Yeah, that's it. They won't leave you alone. I still have one who was a dreadful cheat, and I still get messages from him now. And I treated him really badly. I was like, get out. I don't want anything more to do with you. I never want to see you again. I closed down everything, blocked him completely, like they say you need to do with narcissists. And he's still, how you going? Still finds ways. He's got lots of Facebook profiles, so he finds ways to come in. That's how he got girls. Yeah, there you go. Caitlin, perfect example. Caitlin said she got a vacuum cleaner one birthday and a lawnmower the other. A narcissist never knows you. They don't know who you are. Your parents do not know who you are. Your siblings do not know who you are. And it's so obvious when you start to work it out. but they will not buy you presents at all. Or if they do buy you presents, they have no freaking idea what you like. Great example. Her part father and part mother. Yes, I've heard people do that. It's very true, Jules, and very sad. Yes, I know Linus has met an empath and but they're working together. And that's what it comes down to. If you want to be with someone and you've done the work on yourself and you meet someone who's been through the same thing and has an empathic nature, chances are pretty good, like twin flames, you're brought back together to work on those things like boundaries, self-love, love of other, unconditional love, true love, whatever you'd like to call it, because you've never learnt that. You didn't learn that as a child. So with twin flames, that's exactly the reason why you work together. So you go off and do the healing for yourself because the feelings are so different. You've never felt love before. And when you meet your twin flame, you will feel a level of love you have never felt before in your life. So when you come apart, you have to learn to do the work because you have to learn how to love yourself again. So it's very, very complex. But if you come back together and you both agree or you both want to do the work, it can be the most amazing relationship. And if you speak to twin flames who've done that, their relationships just really soar to the heavens because they have done the work that's required. Very clever journey. Yeah, exactly. So what happens though is because it's such a strange feeling. Hey, Joanne, how you going? Hi, Queen of Water. Um, don't forget, guys, to give me thumbs up on this, please. Hey, Shirley, how you going? Some late runners here, never heard the bell. And yeah, that's why the twin flame. So it's almost like the universe says, you come onto earth, you learn the lessons around what is good and what is not good for you in life. You learn how to accept love and you learn how to give love unconditionally to a person who's going to give you unconditional love back. Now, if you're really healthy with that, then what will happen eventually is you can heal each other. So there'll be healing you do separately, and there'll be a coming together where you heal the rest of it together. Now, some twin flames don't stay together because they don't want to put in the work. There's a lot of work. You both have had pretty traumatic lives, whether that's in relationships, whether it's in your childhood. There's still a lot of healing to do together. But the healing you do together is very, very different because you're giving to someone who's giving back. And we haven't been used to that. So it's quite interesting. Oh, isn't that beautiful? Yeah, so I'm meeting a few people now who've been within a twin flame relationship or have come back together with their twin flame. And the only way that can happen is if both people are putting the work in. So if you're not putting the work in, there's very little likelihood that your twin flame will be able to sense you or feel you. So it might be difficult for them to find their way back to you. Not everybody wants to do the work. It's hard work. If I say to you here, about the work you've done on yourself over the years, once you've learned about your journey and you've learned what is happening with you. I mean, I've been doing the work now for many, many years, and I've still got things that I'm learning about myself. I'm still working on things like responsibility. So as a child, I was always made responsible for everything. So everything that went wrong in the family for some unknown reason became my responsibility to fix. And the first thing I understood by that was watching the movie Mary Poppins. When I first started doing the childhood work, I was trying to trace back to when I first started really going on this journey as a child, trying to understand why I was scared of the dark. And I had very, very clear visions as a child. And I watched the movie Mary Poppins. How are you, Eva? And in Mary Poppins, there's a point in that where somebody says to one of the children, your parents look after you, but who looks after your parents? Something to that effect. And when I rewatched the movie as an adult, I went far out. I had become the parent to my parents. So I'd become parentified by my parents. So I'd become the responsible person in my family. And it took me a long time to understand that. And then what happened from that, I started to realize how responsible I always felt the most responsible at work. I always wanted to make sure everybody was fixed. I always wanted to make sure I did the best job for everybody. And I constantly done that at my own demise. So when I met people, I wanted to fix them. Maybe it was all subconscious. I don't know. I wanted to fix them. So I kept getting people that needed fixing. So drug addicts, alcoholics, cheats, I got them all, the manipulative ones, the overt ones, the covert ones. And I was like, I can't get this right. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't really know why. But yes, that's why, because we want to fix them. We think we're responsible for them. We can't fix people. So I learned not to be responsible at a very basic level, but it's only come to me in the last few days why I'm having trouble still, because I still feel responsible for the world. I still feel responsible when things like the COVID's breaking out and people are getting sick, and I feel like I've got to do something. And 2 o'clock in the morning, spirit slap round the face. You've got to get this. You can't be responsible for other people. Finished. Done. You can't be responsible. The only people you're responsible for is maybe at work, when you're in your work environment, if you're responsible for children, if you're a teacher, maybe while you're responsible for children at school, different kind of responsibility. Mine's much more a social responsibility that's ridiculous, and I can't do anything about it. So I still fret, fear, and get anxious. So when Spirit woke me up the other morning, it was finally that feeling of knowing what they'd been talking about all these years about the responsibilities. It's not a responsibility like, you've got to look after so and so because they're sick, not that responsibility, but this responsibility, like feeling really overwhelmed when people keep ignoring the whole fact of the COVID and how dangerous it is. Feeling like I've got to retaliate and say to people, you can't be like this. You've got to listen. It's really dangerous. There are people dying from it. I've got to learn not to be responsible for that. It's not my place at all. And that was what it was, this deep sense of social responsibility that was steering me in a direction that wasn't healthy. So I'd learned the responsibility at the human level, but I had to learn the responsibility at the much higher level. So let's see what else everybody's going. Yes, responsibility. Ascension, massive shift in ego. Yes, absolutely. I've seen some people come through. Yes, once you start standing up for yourself and putting boundaries in place, Jolene, your relationships with people change. Yes, I grew up way too quickly. I don't think I even had a childhood, to be honest with you. Can't fix people, no. Yes, absolutely. And that again, Jeanette, that first person you're responsible for yourself, that sort of, I knew that and I'd got used to that and I'd stopped fixing people. I stopped finding people to try and fix. People used to always say to me, oh, you're so motherly. You're so motherly. Yeah, that's what that is. But I'm not like that anymore. This was a much more deep social responsibility where I felt the need to always try and make people see things in a different way. When people were talking things like trying to get out of things by, escaping from state to state and spreading viruses around, I felt responsible for that. I felt like I had to fix it. I don't have to fix it. Absolutely, Jolene. And it's a natural thing. Once you start fixing yourself, doesn't even matter if you have very much to do with your children, it still seems to go. Yeah, but it's not like at a level, Caitlin, that it's being responsible consciously. It wasn't like that. Some people think they're spiritual and they want to save the world. It wasn't like that. It was something much deeper within me, some core belief I had about myself that I'm responsible for people. It's been really, really difficult to get to. I've been working for so long to understand it, and finally I got it the other day. And I've since then had a few more epiphanies about things that I'm starting to realize. It's crazy, isn't it? See, everybody's done the same thing. Yes, you don't attract. Once you stop healing people, you won't attract them anymore. I haven't done that for a long time. I learned that lesson a while back. How are you, Heather? This was a much more deeper, perhaps it's really hard to explain, but a much more deeper sense of trying to save humanity. I have feeling that it's sort of like martyrism, like that type of thing. But it wasn't something that was visible to me. I'd fixed myself. I'd fixed all those things around responsibility, fixing others. I'd done all that years ago. This was a much deeper sense of responsibility that was deep in my psyche that I had to move. Um, Yeah, it took a while though. It was a very, very strange sort of feeling to recognize it. I got it in the middle of the night. So it was sort of like waking up with an epiphany. Like it was just a blast, but it had to be seen because I couldn't work it out. I kept thinking, what is it that spirit keeps saying to me I have to stop doing? It's got something to do with responsibility. I've learned I'm not responsible. I don't fix other people anymore. All of that stuff was really clear to me. This was much deeper. This was this need to try and save something much more, trying to save humanity. That's why I said it was almost like a martyrdom thing. But I've realized now, and that shifted something in me that's changed who I am. I agree, Caitlin. I do think it's some sort of martyrdom thing, being responsible. Like that's what I said. I could have been a saint in a past life. It was that deep. I could not work it out at all. But I think I've worked it out now, and I don't think I would let it happen again. But I realize now, like when people are sort of talking about, excusing themselves for having not wearing masks, excusing themselves for having conspiracy theories, those sort of things. And I'd sit there and I think, you don't want to wear a mask. How are you going to handle it when you're in the ICU and somebody's shoving a tube down your neck to get you to breathe because you can't breathe properly with your lungs because they're full of muck? How are you going to do that? If you can't breathe with a mask on, how are you going to breathe when you have COVID? Like, seriously. And that was really starting to get me down. And I felt like I needed to sort of try and somehow fix the world to think differently. But it was much deeper than that. It wasn't like fixing a person or fixing a situation. It was something that was buried deep within me, that I had this responsibility for others. But anyway, I can't quite I can't quite get to the level that it came through on to understand, but it shifted energy within me that was really, really very strange energy. So I'm still working on my stuff. You just don't know how deeply it's buried. And I tried looking for it. I'd done the meditations. I tried to work to find out what was wrong at a deeper level. And I've done all this work around my throat chakra, opening my heart. I'd done everything that I thought I needed to do, but I couldn't quite shift this energy. It sat inside me like a little ball of wool. I could feel it, but I couldn't quite understand it. But they gave me the understanding. Anyway, I have to go, people. So it's been very nice talking today. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, and we'll catch up next Wednesday. If you have any questions, bring them with you next week. You're welcome, Sue. Have a great week. Thanks, everyone.